They were forbidden, buried under censorship, and labeled too dangerous for public viewing. But these 15 films refused to vanish. Banned across multiple countries for challenging power, religion, and morality, they have since resurfaced. And you can watch them today. From political outrage to underground cult followings, these movies tell more than stories. They reveal the price of truth on screen. 1. The Da Vinci Code, 2006. When the Da Vinci Code hit theaters in 2006, it didn't just become a box office sensation. It sparked a worldwide controversy that led to bans across numerous countries. Directed by Ron Howard and based on Dan Brown's best-selling novel, the film follows a symbologist and cryptologist as they unravel a mystery that challenges the very foundation of Christianity. The storyline, suggesting that Jesus may have had a bloodline and that powerful religious institutions suppressed this truth, enraged religious authorities. In countries like Egypt, Jordan, Lebanon, Pakistan, and even Vatican City, the film was immediately blacklisted for what was deemed blasphemy. Governments feared it could undermine religious faith or provoke unrest among conservative communities. In China, the ban was less about faith and more about social harmony, as authorities considered the film politically sensitive. Despite the outcry, the Da Vinci Code has become widely available in most parts of the world. Today, you can stream it on platforms like Netflix, Amazon Prime Video, or purchase it on Google Play and Apple TV. Ironically, the ban's only elevated its notoriety, turning it into a must-watch for many curious viewers. Its mixture of historical conspiracy, high-stakes mystery, and intellectual thrills makes it more than just a film. It's a global conversation piece. 2. A Clockwork Orange, 1971. Few films have ignited as much debate as Stanley Kubrick's A Clockwork Orange. Released in 1971, the film paints a disturbing portrait of a dystopian future where state control and human behavior collide in violent, surreal fashion. It tells the story of Alex DeLarge, a young man immersed in a world of chaos, who is forced into government-sponsored behavioral modification. The film's intense imagery and unapologetic portrayal of brutality led to a flood of censorship. It was banned or heavily censored in Canada, Brazil, Ireland, South Korea, Malaysia, and South Africa. In the United Kingdom, it was pulled from circulation at Kubrick's own request after a series of copycat crimes were allegedly linked to the film's influence. For decades, it was practically a cinematic ghost in the UK. Critics and moral guardians claimed the movie glorified violence with its provocative mix of classical music, stylized visuals, and psychological manipulation. But Kubrick's intention was to create a powerful critique of authoritarianism and the dangers of psychological conditioning. Today, A Clockwork Orange has been restored and reappraised as a cinematic landmark. You can watch it on services like HBO Max, Apple TV, or Amazon Prime. Its legacy lives on, not just as a banned film, but as a bold piece of filmmaking that still challenges viewers with its uncomfortable questions about free will, morality, and control. 3. The Last Temptation of Christ, 1988. Martin Scorsese's The Last Temptation of Christ was destined to stir global controversy from the moment it entered production. Released in 1988, this film offers a deeply personal and philosophical interpretation of Jesus' life, one that humanizes him in ways never before depicted in mainstream cinema. Rather than portraying him solely as divine, the film explores his internal struggles, temptations, and doubts. The response was immediate and explosive. The film was banned in countries such as Argentina, Chile, Israel, Mexico, the Philippines, Turkey, and even certain regions of the United States. Churches denounced it, protests erupted outside theaters, and in France, a screening was firebombed. At the heart of the outrage was the film's imaginative scenes that suggested what might have happened if Jesus had chosen a different path, a purely speculative narrative that proved too provocative for many. Despite the furor, Scorsese stood by his vision, explaining that the film was a work of fiction, not theology. Over time, perspectives shifted. Today, The Last Temptation of Christ is celebrated for its artistry, bold storytelling, and emotional depth. You can now stream the film on platforms like Apple TV or rent it through YouTube Movies. While it remains one of the most divisive religious films ever made, it's also an enduring example of cinema's power to ask difficult questions and to weather even the fiercest storms of censorship. 4. Last Tango in Paris, 1972. Last Tango in Paris, directed by Bernardo Bertolucci and starring Marlon Brando and Maria Schneider, shocked the world upon its release in 1972. The film tells the story of two strangers who engage in a secret, emotionally detached relationship in an empty Paris apartment. But it wasn't just the raw performances or the haunting cinematography that caused a global uproar. It was the film's unapologetic depiction of emotional power, manipulation, and psychological unraveling. The film was immediately banned in Argentina, Brazil, Chile, Italy, Portugal, the Philippines, Venezuela, and South Korea. In Italy, all copies were ordered to be destroyed by the government. The uproar stemmed from scenes that were considered emotionally disturbing, and from the overwhelming sense of moral decay that permeated the story. Critics and censors alike claimed the film promoted depravity and violated public decency. Even decades later, the controversy hasn't faded. In interviews, Maria Schneider revealed she was traumatized by certain scenes and felt deeply betrayed by how the production was handled. This only fueled further criticism and made the film a symbol of how power dynamics behind the camera can mirror those on screen. Despite its troubled legacy, Last Tango in Paris is still accessible today. It can be found on streaming platforms like Apple TV and Amazon Prime Video and is available on DVDs and Blu-ray. While the debate over its ethics continues, the film is often studied in film schools for its narrative structure and raw performance style. It remains a haunting, unsettling entry in cinema history, one that continues to raise questions about the line between art and exploitation. Child 44, 2015. At first glance, Child 44 might seem like just another gritty historical thriller, but the film, based on Tom Rob Smith's novel and starring Tom Hardy, Gary Oldman, and Noomi Rapace, was declared persona non grata in an entire region of the world. Set during Stalin-era Soviet Union, the story follows a loyal secret police officer who uncovers a string of child murders the government refuses to acknowledge. His investigation puts him on a collision course with the brutal machinery of the totalitarian state. That premise alone was enough to trigger bans across Russia, Belarus, Ukraine, Kazakhstan, and Kyrgyzstan. Authorities claimed the film distorted historical facts and portrayed the Soviet Union in an unfairly negative light. Russian officials were especially offended by the suggestion that serial crimes could be dismissed in favor of preserving a political image of perfection. The release was canceled just days before the country's Victory Day, commemorating World War II, making its political context even more sensitive. Despite the ban in post-Soviet states, Child 44 gained recognition in the West as a dark, intelligent thriller that sheds light on the human cost of blind loyalty to an oppressive system. It is currently available for streaming on platforms like Hulu and Apple TV, and can be rented via Amazon or YouTube. The ban, if anything, sparked more interest in the film than it might have otherwise received. It's now seen not only as a compelling mystery, but also as a bold indictment of state censorship and historical whitewashing, making it a perfect example of a film that was silenced in one part of the world, yet continues to speak volumes elsewhere. 6. The Blue Kite, 1993. The Blue Kite, directed by Tian Zhuang, is a poignant and deeply personal account of a young boy growing up during one of China's most turbulent eras. Told through the eyes of a child named Tie-Tu, the film quietly navigates the political storms of the 1950s and 60s, including the anti-rightist movement, the Great Leap Forward, and the Cultural Revolution. It doesn't shout its criticism. It whispers it with devastating clarity. That whisper was enough to get the film completely banned in China. What made The Blue Kite so dangerous wasn't overt rebellion, but its unflinching honesty. It painted a portrait of ordinary lives shattered by ideology, loyalty punished by the very system it sought to uphold, The Chinese government not only banned the film, but also suspended the director from filmmaking for nearly a decade. Despite its censorship at home, The Blue Kite received international acclaim. Film festivals in Cannes and Toronto praised its quiet strength and emotional authenticity. It became a symbol of resistance, not through confrontation, but through truth-telling. Today, The Blue Kite remains unavailable in mainland China, but it can be accessed through international DVD imports and on select streaming platforms that carry foreign film collections, such as the Criterion Channel or Mubi. It serves as a reminder of how even the softest stories can carry the loudest critiques, and how art can endure even under the strictest regimes. The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. 2011, David Fincher's. The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo is a cold, calculated thriller wrapped in layers of corporate corruption, unsolved mysteries, and deeply scarred characters. Based on the best-selling novel by Stieg Larsson, the film follows journalist Mikael Blomkvist and computer hacker Lisbeth Salander as they unravel the decades-old disappearance of a wealthy heiress and uncover far darker secrets buried within a powerful family. While the film was widely praised in the West for its direction and performances, especially Rooney Mara's transformative role as Salander, it didn't find such a welcome reception everywhere. Vietnam banned the film after Fincher and Sony refused to censor or remove scenes that the country's Ministry of Culture, Sports, and Tourism deemed unacceptable. The officials claimed that certain scenes clashed with Vietnamese cultural values and government censorship policies. Rather than cut key moments, the filmmakers chose to pull the movie entirely. The ban sparked discussions about artistic integrity and censorship in Southeast Asia. For fans and critics alike, the refusal to alter the film only cemented its legacy as a bold, uncompromising adaptation. What made the ban ironic was that the film's very essence, exposing hidden crimes beneath polished surfaces, mirrored the nature of censorship itself. Today, The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo is easily accessible in most countries. It can be streamed on platforms like Netflix, Apple TV, and Amazon Prime Video. Despite its brief ban in Vietnam, the film has found a lasting audience around the globe, proving that hard truths and gritty storytelling still have a place in mainstream cinema, even when they challenge comfort zones. 8. There Is No Evil. 2020. There Is No Evil is not the kind of film you expect to emerge from Iran, and that's exactly why it was banned there. Directed by Mohammad Rasulov, the film is a collection of 4 interconnected stories, all dealing with the moral consequences of state-enforced punishment. Each segment explores the lives of people affected by capital punishment, either as executioners or those resisting it. Rasulov, known for his critical eye on Iran's political and judicial systems, made the film in secret. At the time, he was banned from filmmaking and under intense scrutiny by the authorities. But he and his crew managed to complete the project covertly, smuggling the footage out of Iran to premiere at the Berlin International Film Festival, where it won the Golden Bear, the festival's highest honor. Iran quickly responded by banning the film entirely and increasing pressure on Rasulov, who was sentenced to prison for his defiance. The government deemed the film anti-state propaganda, accusing it of spreading messages that undermine national stability. But to the global film community, There Is No Evil was an act of courage, a cinematic protest wrapped in poetic storytelling. The film is now available internationally, especially on platforms like MUBI and the Criterion Channel, which specialize in bold world cinema. It has also been featured at various human rights and political film festivals. While it remains inaccessible in its country of origin, There Is No Evil serves as a beacon of defiance, art, and moral inquiry, a reminder that truth can still find a way, even under the heaviest chains. Ninth King of the Sands, 2013. King of the Sands isn't a household name, and that's by design. This Syrian historical drama, directed by Najdat Anzur, tackles one of the most politically sensitive subjects in the Middle East, the rise of King Abdulaziz ibn Saud, founder of modern Saudi Arabia. The film portrays the monarch not as a national hero, but as a ruthless ruler who used manipulation and violence to consolidate power, forging an alliance with Wahhabism that would reshape the entire region. Unsurprisingly, Saudi Arabia was not pleased. The kingdom promptly banned the film and condemned it as a slanderous attack on its national history and ruling family. Government officials labeled it insulting, and Saudi media outlets refused to even acknowledge its existence. Diplomatic tensions between Syria and Saudi Arabia, already strained due to the Syrian civil war, only deepened after the film's release. Director Najdat Anzur stood firm, claiming that his film was a historical exploration based on real events and research, not a political smear. He even stated publicly that threats against his life had been made, but he refused to withdraw the film or alter its content. Today, King of the Sands remains banned in Saudi Arabia and several Gulf nations, but it can be viewed online via independent distributors and on select video-on-demand platforms. It is also occasionally screened at political and academic film festivals focused on Middle Eastern studies. While it may not have reached blockbuster status, King of the Sands represents something much rarer. A film unafraid to take on the sacred myths of national identity, offering a different version of history that power structures would rather keep buried. 10. Cannibal Holocaust. 1980. Few films have ignited global outrage quite like Cannibal Holocaust. Directed by Italian filmmaker Ruggero Deodato, this horror film, disguised as a documentary, shocked the world with its extreme visuals and haunting realism. Marketed as a lost documentary from a group of American filmmakers who ventured into the Amazon jungle, it follows a rescue team that discovers their footage, revealing the group's brutal encounters with indigenous tribes and the horrifying truth about their fate. Upon release, Cannibal Holocaust was banned in more than 50 countries, including Italy, the United Kingdom, Australia, Norway, and New Zealand. It was pulled from theaters within days of its premiere, and Deodato was arrested under suspicion that he had actually killed his actors during filming. He later had to bring them to court to prove they were alive. What enraged authorities wasn't just the violence. It was the film's eerie realism, use of real animal killings, and the mockumentary style that made it seem too authentic for comfort. Despite all this, some critics hailed the film as a grim commentary on media exploitation and Western imperialism. Deodato claimed his goal was to critique how modern civilization views so-called savage cultures, pointing the camera's blame back at the viewers. Today, Cannibal Holocaust is accessible through niche streaming platforms like Shudder and through DVD and Blu-ray editions released by specialty distributors. It comes with heavy content warnings and often includes filmmaker commentary and disclaimers. While it remains one of the most controversial films ever made, it also has a passionate cult following that defends its artistic merit. Whether viewed as exploitative or thought-provoking, one thing is clear. Cannibal Holocaust pushed the boundaries of cinema in a way few films ever have, and left a scar that still lingers. 11. Salo, or The 120 Days of Sodom, 1975. Paolo Pasolini's Salo, or The 120 Days of Sodom, is perhaps the most infamous banned film of all time. Inspired by the writings of the Marquis de Sade and set during the final days of Mussolini's fascist rule, the film depicts a group of elites who imprison and torment a group of young captives in a secluded villa. But this is no ordinary horror story. It's a political allegory aimed at fascism, power abuse, and moral decay. Upon release, the reaction was swift and severe. Salo was banned in the United Kingdom, Australia, Canada, Italy, Finland, New Zealand, and several other nations. Many film boards refused to issue it a certificate at all, essentially criminalizing possession of the film. Critics were divided. Some saw it as grotesque exploitation, while others recognized it as a bold critique of authoritarian cruelty. Pasolini himself was murdered shortly before the film's release, adding a dark aura of mystery around the project. Whether the murder was related to the film has long been debated, but it certainly intensified the controversy surrounding it. Today, Salo is still banned in some regions, but is legally available in others through platforms like Criterion Channel and in uncut versions on Blu-ray. Its screenings are often accompanied by panel discussions or scholarly introductions. underscoring its reputation as a film not just to be watched, but to be analyzed and understood. This is not an easy film to watch, and it never was meant to be. Pasolini didn't want viewers to be entertained. He wanted them to be disturbed, to confront the horrors of systemic violence and unchecked power. Salo stands as cinema's darkest mirror, forcing us to look into a reflection we'd rather avoid. 12. A Serbian Film, 2010. If there's a movie that continues to test the very limits of free expression, it's a Serbian film. Directed by Srđan Spasojević, the film tells the story of a retired film actor who's lured into making what he believes is an art project, only to discover he's trapped in a web of sinister control and irreversible horror. It's a bleak, relentless descent into exploitation, manipulation, and loss of autonomy. Unsurprisingly, the film was banned in numerous countries including Ireland, New Zealand, Norway, the Philippines, Spain, and was temporarily pulled from Brazil. In many cases, even edited versions couldn't pass censors. The reaction was one of overwhelming condemnation, not only because of the content, but because it felt like a direct challenge to the line between cinema and obscenity. However, the film's creators argue that the story is a metaphor for Serbia's political history, a brutal allegory for how people have been used, discarded, and destroyed by corrupt systems of power. According to the director, a Serbian film was never meant for mainstream consumption. It was a cry of rage wrapped in grotesque storytelling. Despite the bans, the movie developed a massive underground following. It became an internet legend, passed around through encrypted files, special Blu-ray editions, and banned film festivals. Today, it can be found uncut via niche physical distributors and through some controversial online platforms. Viewer discretion is not just advised, it's essential. A Serbian film is one of the most extreme viewing experiences ever committed to film. Whether it's protest art or provocation, it remains a cinematic powder keg, and a haunting testament to how far filmmakers will go to make their message impossible to ignore. 13. In the Realm of the Senses, 1976. In the Realm of the Senses is one of the most controversial films ever released in Japan, and one of the most heavily censored globally. Directed by Nagisa Oshima, this 1976 film is based on the real-life story of Sada Abe, a former geisha who developed an all-consuming obsession with her lover, leading to a shocking and fatal act that stunned Japan in the 1930s. The film explores themes of obsession, control, and the psychological unraveling of desire, taken to its most extreme end. Despite being a Japanese production, the film was never legally released in its full form in Japan. Japanese law prohibited the depiction of certain scenes, so the negatives had to be processed in France. Oshima faced multiple legal battles in Japan, including obscenity charges, but he was eventually acquitted, defending the film as a legitimate work of art and political commentary. Globally, the reaction was equally intense. It was banned in Australia, Israel, Portugal, several provinces in Canada, and Brazil. Critics and governments alike condemned it for its refusal to shy away from graphic intensity, while others hailed it as a masterpiece of transgressive cinema, a film that dared to portray the raw power of human fixation without compromise. Today, In the Realm of the Senses is available on platforms like the Criterion Channel and in uncut editions through select home media distributors. While still debated for its approach, the film is now studied in cinema programs for its artistry, cultural context, and legal impact. It is less a piece of entertainment and more a psychological case study, one that still raises uncomfortable, important questions about freedom of expression and the boundaries of storytelling. 14th Necromantic, 1987. Germany's Necromantic, directed by Jörg Buttgereit, is not just a banned film, it's a cinematic dare. Shot on a shoestring budget in the late 1980s, this underground horror film tells the story of a man who works for a cleanup crew, retrieving bodies from accident scenes, and whose personal life becomes consumed by disturbing rituals and emotional breakdowns. The movie doesn't follow traditional horror formulas. Instead, it blurs the line between decay, obsession, and grief in ways few films have ever attempted. Upon release, Necromantic was banned almost instantly in its home country and quickly added to blacklists in Australia, Iceland, Malaysia, Singapore, and even parts of Canada. Censors condemned the film not just for its visuals, but for its defiant attitude. Blue himself openly mocked the censorship boards, claiming that their outrage was proof that the film had touched a raw cultural nerve. Unlike most banned films, Necromantic never sought legitimacy through film festivals or awards. It thrived in the underground, traded through VHS tapes, whispered about in punk clubs and horror conventions, and sought after by collectors. Its cult status only grew with time. Today, the film is legally available through specialty distributors like Arrow Video and Serbian Films, often in deluxe collector's editions with director commentaries and essays. While it remains banned or restricted in some countries, it can be found online through boutique horror streaming platforms. Viewer warning is essential. Necromantic isn't made to entertain or scare in the traditional sense. It's a challenge, a test of endurance, and, for some, a misunderstood meditation on isolation and trauma. For others, it's simply one of the most disturbing films ever made. Either way, it has earned its place in the annals of cinematic rebellion. 15. I Spit on Your Grave, 1978. Originally released under the title Day of the Woman, Mir Zarchi's I Spit on Your Grave has long been one of the most divisive and debated films in horror history. The story follows Jennifer Hills, a writer who retreats to a remote cabin to work on her manuscript, only to endure a harrowing ordeal at the hands of locals. What follows is a cold, calculated journey of revenge that shocked even seasoned horror audiences. The film was banned in countries like Ireland, Norway, Iceland, New Zealand, and parts of the United Kingdom. Even in places where it wasn't formally outlawed, screenings were heavily protested or censored. Critics condemned it as exploitative and deeply disturbing. Roger Ebert famously gave it a 0-star review, calling it a vile bag of garbage. But others, including some modern feminist scholars, have revisited the film and argued that its grim tone and unflinching portrayal of justice flipped genre conventions in powerful ways. The 2010 remake also faced bans and restrictions, particularly in Ireland and other conservative markets. Though it sparked less legal action than the original, both versions have now become cult staples, often screened at midnight horror festivals, and discussed in academic settings about genre ethics and moral ambiguity. Today, I Spit on Your Grave is widely available on streaming platforms such as Amazon Prime, Tubi, and Apple TV, though often with warnings or edited versions depending on the region. It's a film that continues to divide. One man's revenge fantasy is another viewer's trauma, but it refuses to be forgotten. These 15 films were silenced, banned, and buried in censorship, but they refuse to die. Today they're available for those brave enough to watch, question, and reflect. If you found this documentary eye-opening, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share.